Hi, welcome to iTTV. I'm your biology teacher, Dr. Meena, and today we're going to be sharing a lesson on transport system in multicellular organisms, the first chapter in Form 5 biology. Transport. What do we mean by transport? How do we get around from one place to another? The same question exists in living organisms. Today we're going to take a look at the transport system in unicellular organisms as well as multicellular organisms. Why is transportation important in organisms? At the end of today's lesson, we are going to be learning to identify the problem faced by multicellular organisms and why they need transportation. It is purely to procure their needed nutrients and requirements and to get rid of the waste products, and to suggest how multicellular organisms overcome these problems. Now let us take a look at our first slide. All living organisms need to metabolize the required nutrients and they need to eliminate the waste products. For example, all living organisms require oxygen and they also have to eliminate the carbon dioxide, which is the byproduct of the aerobic respiration that takes place in the living organism. In this slide, you can take a look that how the transportation of the oxygen and nutrients has to happen to the living organism, while the transportation out of the carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste has to be carried out too. It is very important for us to understand what is the concept of total surface area in the role of transportation. Now let us take a look at this little cube. A total surface area is the area covered by all the surfaces of this cube. Now can you see how many surfaces are there in this cube? Yes, you're right. There are 6 surfaces. And do you know how to calculate the volume of this cube? The volume of this cube is simply the comprising measurement of the length, the width, and the height. Now let us take a look at the board. The total surface area, the formula is given here. If you see this cube, we can see that there are 6 surfaces. Back to this cube, 6 surfaces, and the width and length of each surface is multiplied to the total surface area, while the volume is the multiplication of the height, width, and length. If assuming this becomes an x cm square and this becomes a y cubic cm. Now, why is it so important for the concept of total surface area and the ratio of total surface area to volume? Many unicellular organisms like the amoeba and paramecium have got very small total surface area and very small volume. However, the ratio of their total surface area to volume is large. This ratio, because of its being large, it enables the diffusion of required nutrients into the cell and the elimination of waste products. However, huge or large multicellular organisms, for example, an elephant or a frog, or even us human beings, we have a very large total surface area and a very large volume. However, our ratio of total surface area to volume is small. And this predisposes us to a slow diffusion rate. Now let us take a look at the slide for further explanation. Now look at this example. Small organisms have a large total surface area to volume ratio, so diffusion of substance occurs rapidly. It is very clearly shown in this example, the calculation of total surface area and the volume of a cube, and how we can go about calculating the total surface area to volume ratio. As for unicellular and simple multicellular organisms, they do not require as much nutrients or oxygen as large multicellular organisms. They require much less oxygen and nutrients, and they produce much less waste products. And they have a much more shorter distance from the external environment to the cells where the nutrients have to be delivered. And overall, they have a large total surface area to volume ratio. All of these attributes does not require a unicellular organism to have a specific transport system. However, an amoeba, which is a small unicellular protozoan, as we can see in this diagram, is subjected to simple diffusion purely because it has got a large total surface area to volume ratio. Likewise, the planaria, a flatworm, has a thin and flattened body to increase the total surface area to volume ratio for efficient diffusion of substances. Larger organisms have a much more smaller total surface area to volume ratio, and that is why the diffusion of substances occurs slowly. Okay, now let us take a look at the total surface area to volume ratio for larger organisms. Now in this example, as shown in this slide, we have a larger cube, and the larger cube has got a larger total surface area, which is 96 cm square, while the volume of the cube is 64 cubic centimeter. Hence, the total surface area over volume is 1.5 per cm. Now, this is so much more smaller compared to the earlier cube, which was just 1 cm, where it amounted to 6 per cm. Due to the smaller total surface area to volume ratio, the diffusion of substances in larger organisms occurs much more slowly. Now, let us take a look at what the smaller total surface area to volume ratio contribute to the transportation in larger organisms. Larger multicellular organisms require more oxygen, and they require more nutrients, and they also produce more waste products. And they have a very small total surface area to volume ratio. Besides that, they also have a longer distance between the external environment to the cells which are within the tissues. This requires a much more sophisticated transport system in larger multicellular organisms. Now, this means there's a huge problem for large organisms. Owing to the need for nutrients and the obstacles of having a longer distance from the external environment to the cellular environment, and the smaller volume total surface area to volume ratio requires the multicellular organisms to adopt a more sophisticated transport system. Hence, they develop specialized structures. For example, animals, they develop a circulatory system, while the plants develop a vascular system. Now let us do a small activity to determine the different sizes of cubes and their correlation to the total surface area to volume ratio, and how this ratio contributes to the rate of diffusion. Now, in this experiment, our aim is to correlate the different sizes of cubes to total surface area over volume ratio, and to determine how the total surface area to volume ratio affects the rate of diffusion. Now here we are going to take a look at what is the effect of different sizes of the cubes on the total surface area to volume ratio and the effect of total surface area to volume ratio on the rate of diffusion. Okay, what is the hypothesis for this experiment? We hypothesize that the larger cubes will have a smaller total surface area to volume ratio and hence a slower rate of diffusion of substances. The variables that are involved in this experiment include the manipulated variables, which are the size of potato cubes. We can also work with jelly cubes or even with sponges. The responding variables would be the total surface area to volume ratio and the percentage of colored area per minute. The fixed variable would be the type of colored solution and the type of potato. The materials needed for this experiment are none other than one big potato cut to the various sizes and a colored solution. The apparatus needed are a 250 milliliter beaker, a white tile, a knife, ruler and forceps. We have to calculate the total surface area to volume ratio of each cube using the formula. And determining the rate of diffusion is by using the following formula: percentage of colored area over time. Now, the procedure requires us to use a knife to cut 3 potato cubes with sides 1 cm, 2 cm and 4 cm respectively. We then have to calculate the total surface area, volume and the ratio of total surface area to volume for each cube. All these results will be recorded in a table. We are now going to immerse the 3 potato cubes in the same colored solution for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, the potato cubes are removed from the beaker. Now, we'll have to cut each potato cube into half. Let us take a closer look and estimate the percentage of area stained by the colored solution in each cube. We now can calculate the rate of diffusion using the formula percentage of colored area over time. These results are also recorded in the same table. Now we can see the results exhibited in a table. If you can see here, it is very clearly labeled as cubes A, B and C, and the dimension of sides are indicated as 1, 2 and 4 cm. The total surface area has been calculated. It corresponds to 6, 24 and 96 cm square. As for the volume, it is 1, 8 and 64 cubic centimeter. The ratio is 6, 3 and 1.5, and the estimated percentage of colored area is 100, 60 and 30. Hence, we can calculate the rate of diffusion, the percentage over time. Okay, in this case, 100 divided by 30 minutes, it becomes 3.33 percentage over minute, 2 percentage over minute and 1 percentage over minute. Hence, our hypothesis is proven right. The sizes of the different cubes do have an effect on the ratio of total surface area to volume, and the ratio of total surface area to volume do affect the rate of diffusion. And we have realized that the larger the cubes, the smaller the total surface area to volume ratio, and hence the slower the rate of diffusion. Now is the time to assess how well you have understood today's lessons. This is a simple self-mastery test. I'm sure all of you would be able to answer these questions. Let us take a look at question number 1. Which substance is not required to be transported into the cells? The choices given are oxygen, glucose, carbon dioxide, and vitamins. I'm sure, dear students, you would have guessed it very easily. Do we need oxygen inside the cells? Yes, we do. Oxygen is the most important gas that is required for the respiration of all multicellular organisms. Do we need glucose? Of course, glucose is our nutrient. Do we need carbon dioxide? Carbon dioxide is a waste product from metabolic respiration. Do we need vitamins inside the cell? Of course. You know what happens when you don't take your multivites at home? So you have guessed it right. Carbon dioxide is the answer. Carbon dioxide is a substance which is not required to be transported into the cells. Carbon dioxide needs to be eliminated from the cells. Now let us move on to question number 2. Which substance needs to be transported into the cells? And the choices are amino acids, toxic waste, urea, carbon dioxide. From the choices A, B, C and D, which do you think is not needed inside the cell? Let us go through it one by one. Amino acids, aren't they the building blocks for proteins that make up our whole body? So don't we need amino acids inside the cell? Yes, you have guessed it right. The answer is A, amino acids. Now let us take a look at the other choices. Toxic waste, urea and carbon dioxide are the byproducts of metabolic respiration, and they have to be eliminated from the cells. Now let us move on to question number 3. Alright, let us move on to question number 3. Large multicellular organisms need transport systems because A. Diffusion across the body surface alone will not satisfy the body's requirements. Large organisms have a smaller volume. C. Nutrients diffuse directly into the body tissues. And D. Large organisms have large body surface and thus need efficient means of obtaining nutrients. Now, let us go through each one of these statements one by one. Large multicellular organisms need transport systems for 2 reasons. One is because of its total surface area to volume ratio, which is very small. And 2, because of the distance between the external environment and the cellular environment. Now, in the choices given in this question, let us take a look at A. Diffusion across the body surface alone will not satisfy the body's requirements. That is true with large multicellular organisms. Large multicellular organisms cannot depend on pure, simple diffusion to transport all the required nutrients to all the cells in the large multicellular organism. Now let us take a look at B. Large organisms have a smaller volume? I don't think so. Large organisms have a much larger volume. For example, take a look at a hippopotamus. It is a very large organism with a very large volume. C. Nutrients cannot diffuse directly into the body tissues. Nutrients would not be able to diffuse once the nutrients have reached in the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide at the alveolus to the cells. Large organisms have small body surface and thus need efficient means of obtaining nutrients. Large organisms do not have a small body surface. They have a large body surface, and hence this excludes choice D. So the answer for question number 3 is definitely A. Diffusion across the body surface alone will not satisfy the large organism's body's requirements. Okay, let us move on to question number 4. Dash animals have a specialized transport system. and look at all the choices: acellular, unicellular, multicellular, and all of the above. Now let us take a look at each one. What is acellular? Acellular means without a cell. An acellular organism would mean an organism that exists very much like an organelle inside the cell. A unicellular organism, for example, are our amoeba and paramecium. The multicellular organism is definitely the simple multicellular organism, and the large ones such as elephants, the vertebrates, the invertebrates. Now, which of these three have a specialized transport system? Okay, let me give you a hint. In what kingdom do animals and plants belong? Do they belong to acellular, unicellular, or multicellular? Yes, you have guessed it right. Animals which have a circulatory system and plants with a vascular system are in the category of multicellular organisms. Hence, they have specialized transport system. So the answer is C for this question. Okay, dear students, answering those questions was a lot of fun, isn't it? Now, let us do something a little bit more. Okay, now take a look at this slide. State 2 problems faced by multicellular organisms in obtaining their cellular requirements and removing waste product. Now, from all our discussions so far, you would have understood what are the obstacles faced by multicellular organisms in obtaining the required nutrients and in removing their waste products. I'll give you all a little time to contemplate on the answers. Yes, you all have got it right. The two main obstacles faced by large multicellular organisms is none other than 1. The small total surface area to volume ratio, and 2. the longer distance from the external environment to the cellular environment, which inhibits the rate of diffusion and thus necessitates a specialized transport system. That concludes our lesson for today. Your take-home message from today's lesson should be why multicellular organisms develop specialized transport system. It is mainly to compensate the small total surface area to volume ratio and the longer distance from the surface to the cellular environment, which slows down the rate of diffusion. Hence, a much more specialized and a much more extensive transport system is needed. And talking about the circulatory system in animals, we will look forward to that in lesson 2. That concludes our lesson for today. Till we meet again in our next lesson, where we'll be looking at the circulatory system much more extensively. I'm Dr. Meena signing off from iTTV. Thank you.